My name is Deb Cometti, and I'll be your moderator for this class. Welcome to the Institute of Divine Metaphysical Research. This is a school and not a church. We are affiliated with any religious organization. Non-profit, non-denominational, religious and scientific research organization dedicated to showing proof of the existence of Yahweh our Elohim and the operation of His eternal purpose, pattern, and plan operating throughout eternity to this present day. The school was established as a result of a divine vision and revelation given to our founder, Dr. Henry Clifford Kinley, in the state of Ohio in 1931. We were incorporated in the state of California in the year 1958. We hold classes in the United States and certain other foreign countries. The Syracuse branch was established in 1969. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to the president of our class, Dr. Robert Welch, and the vice president, Dr. John Cometti. In this school, we use the true, correct, and original name and title been improperly substituted by God. The Holy Spirit manifested in or out of a physical body is Yahshua. It has been erroneously substituted by Jesus Christ. Lord, the Apostle Paul, filled with the Holy Spirit, tells us in 1 Corinthians 8 and 5 that there are many and God's many, but each Lord must have and each God must have also. Elohim, but unlike Lord and God, means Elohim is the title our Creator chose for Himself. Jesus was an erroneous name, a minor on your part in a good dictionary or encyclopedia would prove that neither the Hebrew, Greek, nor Latin languages have any characters or letters that would produce a sound that is made by this letter J. Was there a J in the English language until some 1400 years after the Messiah's death. Therefore, such names as Jesus and Jehovah are renderings of the true and original name of the Father and Son. Christ is just like Lord and God. Yahweh is your spirit. In this state, He is incomprehensible and inscrutable. He is the ultimate source and limits and bounds of everything. We have His pure spirit state symbolized on this chart as a cloud. Yahweh is not a cloud. He merely chose a cloud to symbolize Himself because a cloud has no particular or descriptive shape and form. We have drawn this cloud all the way around the cloud. In like manner, everything in the universe Yahweh. Yahweh, knowing that man could not perceive of Him in His pure spirit state, took on shape and took on form within Himself as Yahweh. This is the Word or Son, a supercorporeal being, having the shape and form of a man, but without flesh and blood. This form could only be seen in divine vision and understood in divine revelations. The self-same Spirit manifested Himself in a physical body and walked the earth as Yahshua the Messiah, whom the world calls Jesus Christ. Now there's only one name given unto salvation, and we must know that name. So the simple yet intelligent question that we should ask ourselves is, what was the name of the Savior during the time He walked the earth plane? A further understanding of this name and title may be had by reading the preface of the Holy Name Bible. Also in this school, we teach by the divine pattern of the universe. Build one exactly like it in the wilderness of Sinai. The pattern consists of a most holy place, a holy place, and a court round about. These three compartments to show proof how that everything in the universe abides within the pure, how that everything in the universe is made and operates according to the structure and function of this threefold tabernacle pattern, and that absolutely nothing escapes the pattern. The aims of the institution are as follows. First is to help you find and know Yahweh your Elohim as he really is and actually exists. Number two is to form a nucleus of universal brotherhood of humanity in Yahshua the Messiah without distinction of race or nationality, creed, sex, caste, or color. Number three is to investigate the unexplained spirit law, or so-called law of nature, and the powers latent in man. Number four is to encourage and promote the study of the scriptures, comparative religion, psychology, philosophy, and modern practical and occult science. Number five is to extirpate current superstition, skepticism, and ignorance. Number six, to learn, know, and understand the operation of Yahweh's eternal purpose through the dispensations and ages. Number seven, to discern and avoid being deceived by Lucifer, the serpent, the devil, the dragon, or Satan and his demons, operating the mystery of iniquity on earth through the dispensations of time. Number eight, to earnestly contend for the common salvation and faith, which was once delivered unto the sons or children of Yahweh. Number nine is to make known that Yahweh from the beginning ordained there is no other name given among men whereby man can be saved, saving the name of Yahshua the Messiah. Number 10 is to inherit eternal life now in the kingdom of Yahshua the Messiah with the hope of immortal glorification in the new earth state. Our watchword is peace, and our slogan is speak the truth. Tonight we'll have a prayer to dedicate the lecture by our president, Dr. Robert Welch. That'll be followed by our scripture reading, which is Exodus 12, 1 through 14. And the scripture readers are myself and Dr. Scott Miller, and I will be doing the hospitality.
Good evening. Take a moment and bow our hearts and minds unto our Heavenly Father and communicate with Him, for we know of His ever-presence. And we know He knows our sufferings and our excitement for being here. And that we earnestly wait for this transformation in the flesh. For while we're here, we know that we're not with Him that way. So let us thank Him for all the blessings He bestows upon us each and every day. May we all say hallelujah.
Hallelujah. The scripture is Exodus, the 12th chapter, verses 1 through 14. I'll be reading from a Schofield Reference Bible, inserting the true and correct names. Exodus 12 and 1. And Yahweh spoke unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. If the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto him take it according to the number of souls, every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts, on the upper doorpost of the houses wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread. And with bitter herbs shall they eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor boiled at all with water, but fire, its head with its legs, and with the inward parts thereof. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remains of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. And thus shall you eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, your staff in your hand. And ye shall eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am Yahweh. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses wherein you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to Yahweh throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. So that's Exodus the 12th chapter, verses 1 through 14. I'd like to say good evening to everybody and welcome you here, and welcome everybody that may be viewing on YouTube. And we do have our guest with us, Dr. Carol Miller from our Tampa class. So we want to welcome you, Carol, and ask you to be our first speaker. Hi, it's great to be here again, my second home. I thought I was going to be here Wednesday, but I just didn't make it. The plane just wouldn't get me here. So, yeah, we sat on the plane for about 50 minutes, I think, and they said there was a computer glitch. And it doesn't sound too good. So the pilot came back on and said, I got to get the engineers over here, or the maintenance, I mean. And then they said they fixed it. So we took off, and we did an hour in the air, and he comes back on again. Excuse me. And he said something about we're going to be going through the clouds. Not now, we're not in any clouds now, but we're going to be going through as we get closer to Syracuse, and there's something not working properly with the de-icing mechanism or something like that. And I never heard of them de-icing in the air. I didn't realize they did that, but apparently we're going into the clouds and they had to de-ice or something. So he said, well, we're an hour out, it'll take an hour to go back, so we went. So there's 2 hours. We sat for 2 more hours. They did give us pizza and soda and stuff. sat 2 more until we got on the plane. I didn't get in until 11. So, and what we did was I was going to come in Thursday on another airline because I wanted to be at Frank's thing. And it just didn't happen. They changed the date. And I had already changed my flight, and I thought, the Thursday flight on the other airline goes right out of my home airport, and but it was too late. It was getting in too late, but anyway. So anyway, it's always good to come back here. I don't have a lot on my mind. I was just going to mention a couple of things. I volunteer at the airport a couple of days a month, and I sit in this right down the end. It's a big counter, and 2 people usually sit there, and it's the Jehovah's Witness. They got all their stuff out there. And they get more people out there because they're in this area where everybody, walks by, and I'm really kind of surprised the airport allows a religious group like that to do that. And I've spoken with them different times because we kind of just help people out with different issues and stuff. And they get a lot of questions asked to them, not about their religion, but about, how do I get to my gate? And of course, they're wanting to push their pamphlets and everything. And especially if there's a woman and a man, usually in the, it's very nice. So I spoke with her a while ago, and I mentioned names to her. And she
she said. They don't want to know, they just brush over it, you know. So, so I brought it up again. She came down to me the other day when I was there, and she brought it up again, and, well, no, she didn't bring up the name. I actually brought up the name. She just came over to chat, I think. And I said, oh, I just wish you'd use the real name, you know. And I just had to get that out to her again. And she said, well, I quoted that Bible quote to her, the one where there's no other name. Get that, I don't want to misquote it. Under whereby we can be saved. And she, I don't know, like I say, she's very nice, but she's not, you know, she's not going to bend. She's just not going to, bend. So.
Acts 4:12. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given
Right.
among men whereby we must be saved.
So I quoted that to her, and what she said, I couldn't believe it. She came back and said, well, I said, it's right in the Bible, you know, this quote. And she said, well, you know, everybody uses the name of Jesus. And I said, but that doesn't make it right. You know, I said, it's not right. I said, they can't really help it. You know, they don't maybe know the correct name, but we know they know the correct name. You know, and they're just not wanting to use it. Anyway, she gave me a pamphlet. We got talking about how bad the situation is in the earth plane and everything, and aren't they the ones that believe that the good ones will remain on earth and right, and the rest of them will be destroyed? And so I had the pamphlet and I wanted to read it, and I didn't bring it. I forgot it. I grabbed some other stuff and never grabbed that. I mean, I know what I'm going to read is not going to be correct, but it's kind of interesting just to see, you know, what's going on in some of these other religions. So anyway, I'd like to do that, and I will probably, you know, have a chat with her again. And whether I'll get anywhere, I don't know. But then I think it was yesterday, I was trying to get NPR on the radio, and I came by this religious station. This is a different subject, but it was a Christian station, and they were talking about giving out communion. And the lady said, these lay people cannot be giving out communion. She said, it's just wrong. She says, you're putting God into a person. That's, you know, exactly what you're doing. And she said, they can't be doing that. It has to be a priest that does it. And so then she started mentioning how, she said, a lot of these lay people, she said, they got thick makeup on, and they're wearing sleeveless shirts and mini skirts, and, you know, she was like degrading the lay ministers. So I'm thinking, so, you know, this is where they're thinking this. Only the priest. I mean, he's so holy, you know, he's the only one that can put God into you, so you must go to the priest. I was kind of shocked when I heard that, because these lay people have been giving out communion for years and years and years. And, you know, with everything that's going on with the priest, you know, I wouldn't call them very holy either, so I don't know where she's at, but, so anyhow, it's just everywhere. You know, the Jays are everywhere. Everything's being taught as wrong is everywhere, and, you know, I don't know. I don't know where we're going with it all, but anyway, I was trying to think if I had anything else. I thought I had one more thought, but now it's gone. What was it? I was going to mention something else. See, you get up here and flies away. Anyway, you know, we're just lucky because this is simple once you get it unfolded or whatever. You know, once it opens up, it's just, you know, it's just simple. And, you know, we're lucky. I feel like we are a minority, there's no doubt about that. We're certainly not a majority. When you see, you know, millions, billions of people, everybody's getting fed the wrong stuff. So, you know, we have to be thankful that we're getting fed, I mean, the truth. And, you know, it's just hard to come by, and not many people are exposed to it. So, again, just happy to be here and just to have anything to say about this teaching. It's certainly took me out of the darkness into the light. So that's what we're all shooting for. We want the light. We don't want to ever go back to that darkness. And I don't know how people can do it. There are people that have gone back, you know, gone back to the church or whatever. So, you know, I feel like there's a lot I haven't seen or that hasn't been opened up. But when I think of somebody doing that, I think a lot more than I think has been opened up to me, because, you know, Frank, there's no way we could ever go back and, you know, receive communion. And although I told you that story where I did do that, where I was at that funeral and the priest kind of was judging people who could take communion and who couldn't. And I thought, no, I'm going to go and get communion. He has no idea, you know, whether I've been to confession, whether I'm Catholic or not Catholic or whatever. And I went up and took communion. So it's nice to have that, you know, power, to freedom, exactly. That's what it's all about, freedom. We do have that. So with that, turn it.
Thank you, Carol.
Our next speaker will be Dr. Frank DeMasi.
Good evening, class.
Hi, Frank.
Good evening, everyone. Always a joy and a pleasure to be in class. I love this scripture, especially because to me, before I walked into that door, I had no idea of associating a Passover with then Jesus. Had no idea, no concept of it. As far as I was concerned, this was getting close to the end of Lent, and which I cheated anyway, but I could get whatever I wanted and go back and go to church and go home. So, you know, to me, it's like, when you're walking, like, I remember we were in California, in Big Bear, and it was crowded, and I was with some people from class, people from Wisconsin. We looked across the street, and Andy looked, and on the floor, or on the ground, was a $20 bill. He walked up and picked the $20 bill up. No one around. And I was like, wow, this is great. Look at this. This is how I feel when I see Exodus, the 12th chapter. This is beautiful. When you start to see and understand this gospel and how it points out the Messiah. You know, before, again, it separates us from the world. Because the world has no concept or idea that any kind of Passover has anything to do with Jesus. Well, let's start. Go ahead. We'll try and get through it best I can.
Exodus 12 and 1. And Yahweh spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months.
All right, now that right there. See, again, we had go where my thoughts aren't your thoughts, my ways aren't your ways. Isaiah. Because when we came into class, we had our own timetable, our own theories, our own concepts, and our own opinions. But through time and grace, Joshua showed it to us and made us understand his timetable and his purpose and what he's doing and why he's doing it.
Isaiah
55 and 8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith Yahweh.
Right.
For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts.
See, he uses our eyes to fool us. That's the bottom line of it. But we think in the carnal mind, you look at, and, you know, it looks fearsome, but look at with David. With all the sons, they didn't pick the most rugged and handsome son. They picked a little ruddy kid to kill a giant. But you look at it with your own eyes, you never pick David.
Yes.
That's how he fools the world with the simple things that they can't fathom. Go ahead.
This month shall be unto you the beginning of months, it shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak
Right.
ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month, they
Okay.
shall take to them
Go ahead and get to the 14th.
every man a lamb according to their house, of their fathers a lamb for a house. 6. And you shall keep it unto the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel.
Now this is Israel, right? This is in the old covenant. They had to pick a lamb without blemish, right? They had to take it out on the 10th, kill it on the 14th. The whole congregation had to do it at night, couldn't break a bone of it. I'm getting fast, I'm trying not to, but I'll go through it. But all these things are in the book, and 8 billion people in this world will read that and go right by it and not have one clue or understanding that this is pointing to Yahshua the Messiah. We have to understand how blessed and how much grace has been bestowed upon us, that we've been chosen to see these things. Keep going. Go to 6 or 5, John, or Scott.
The lamb shall be without flesh, and a male of the first year.
Okay, so it'd be a virgin without blemish, right? Let's go to John. Get the fulfillment of that. What's it, John 19 something, isn't it? No, without blemish. Isn't it where? Yeah, Yahshua's being. If I find no fault in him.
Luke 23.
Oh, okay. I thought it was John.
John, I'm in 19 and 4. Pilate therefore went forth again and saith unto them, Behold, I bring him forth to you that you may know that I find no fault in him.
Now, again, people in the world, how many billions of people are reading this Bible and reading that phrase and not having any understanding or knowing that what's going on in Yahweh's purpose is he's fulfilling the line of prophets.
Right.
Nobody knows, but yet we know. And that's the foundation of our faith. When you start to put brick upon brick upon brick, and it stays the same, and it stays the same, and it stays the same, you come to the obvious, even this hard head, which is pretty scary, that it has to be divine. No man can come up with these things.
Right.
Keep going, Scott, get to 8. 12:8.
12 and 8. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire, and unleavened bread. And with bitter herbs they shall eat it.
Right? Now, get to the fulfillment of that. I think we're back in John again. 29, 19?
19 and 29 of John. I'll pick it up in 28. After this, Yahshua, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scripture might be fulfilled, saith, I thirst. Now there was set a vessel full of vinegar, and they filled a sponge with vinegar, and put it upon hyssop, and put it to his mouth. When Yahshua therefore had received the vinegar, he said, It is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up the spirit.
Again, the world's going to read that, and they're not going to associate it with any kind of fulfillment. or covenant. And that's why the world today, what's the date today? The 13th? So I think what, next week is Easter?
Yes.
For them. So, you know, they're all preparing. This is Palm Sunday then, I guess. This one. Today's Palm Sunday. You know, for them. How many people in the world are all going to walk around with the palms in their hands after church and think that life is great? And they don't have an idea or a concept of their Creator whatsoever.
Right.
And the only easement in my heart is that Yahshua sees the heart. He's going to judge by the heart. You know, we had the golden ticket. He's allowed us, by grace, to see this thing. We're under that umbrella of grace. Keep going. We got one more, don't we? Yeah, because I want to go after not the body resurrection, but a spiritual. 10. 12, 10.
12, Exodus 12 and 10. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire.
Right, so they had nothing left. So let's just set up the whole scenario. Okay, it was the 10th plague. It was a death plague of the firstborn. This is Yahweh putting that curse on Egypt, showing forth his purpose. Okay, the only way to escape the death plague was to have the blood of a lamb, had to be a firstborn, without blemish, had to have the blood on the inside of the door, not the outside. Because we're going to see, I guess they're having Ben-Hur replayed it all over the place again. You know, getting close to Easter, so we got to have some sort of religious film being played at theaters. But the blood wasn't on the outside of the door. Yahshua's got to be in you, not outside. The death angels don't have to look at the door and say, oh, okay, that one's good, and oh, no, that one's not. Spirit to spirit. Hey, no. Keep going.
Thus shall ye eat it with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Passover.
Right. And they're not going to. So when they go to where they find him, go to his grave where they don't find the body.
John 20 and 1. The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. Then she runneth, and cometh to Peter, Simon Peter, and to the other disciple, whom Yahshua loved, and saith unto them, They have taken away the Master out of the sepulchre, and we know not where they have laid him.
Right, there's no body.
Right.
See, again, the Christian world is thinking there's a physical resurrection because they need something physical to see.
Right.
Because they can't get past that manifestation of the physical to understand the spiritual principle behind it. And only by grace and by love and mercy have we been able to get past that. That's our Passover. That's the blood. That's the blood of the Lamb. And then once Pentecost comes, then that spirit that was in him was put in men. And still going on to this day. Where we don't know when that last day we're going to be walking from one creation into the next. This is beautiful. If you start to see it and understand it, it separates you, it separates us from the world. You know, driving by churches tonight, they're all full. They're all full because it's Palm Sunday. And they're all thinking that they're being righteous and doing something to be reverent to their Creator. They're no better than me. I don't know why I've been given this understanding to see that nothing physical is going to make you acceptable to your Creator. Because you can't earn it. You don't deserve it. It's got to be only by grace. And it's only by mercy. He gives you everything. He's going to give you the intelligence, and he's going to give you the knowledge, and he's going to give you the wisdom. And with those three attributes, it's just going to grow from there. You're going to see his love. You're going to see. Then you're going to see his power, and then that's going to be your foundation, witness after witness. so beautiful. You start to see, I never thought anything that how Jesus could be in the Old Testament. Never knew anything about it, couldn't figure it out. Let alone Joshua, son of Nun. That was another $20 bill that we could pick up and love and say, wow, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? I know I don't want to cheapen it, but the principle I'm trying to make you understand. When any of us walk outside, we find a $20 bill, we're going to be pretty happy. We're going to be pretty happy. We didn't earn it, we didn't deserve it, there it was. Look at it, Exodus 12, showing forth your Creator. We didn't earn it, we didn't deserve it, but yet there it is. And you see the beauty of it. And the shine, how it shines. You find a dirty stone or a diamond and clean it up, and all of a sudden, all those facets of light, all those different ways we can understand and see Exodus the 12th chapter. But those lights, that's like a revelation. That's like a gift of grace and mercy from our Creator. Keep going.
Exodus 12 and 12. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am Yahweh. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you.
Now that's what what's the date of this? 15, what, Dan?
For Exodus?
Yeah.
It's 1490 BBY.
1490, yeah, okay. All right, so now, 1,500 years later, Yahshua the Messiah is going to come into the flesh and start fulfilling all these scriptures. And they're not going to know what's going on. They're just not going to know what's going on, saying, wow, you know, why I didn't come to destroy. Get that, Matthew 5:17.
Matthew 5:17. This is Joshua speaking. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no way pass from the law till all be fulfilled.
Fulfill. Again, before we walk through that door, do we know anything about fulfillment? Yeah, most of us, we all either have mortgage payments or car payments, and well, I don't know about, not many, very few of us, when we finish paying for our house or a car, you don't keep paying for it, it's fulfilled, it's over. I don't mean you throw the car away, it's established. Keep going.
And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to Yahweh throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread, even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from it.
All right, no resurrection, he's the first fruit. No resurrection without him first.
Right.
So, you know, again, it's just so pretty when you start to see and understand that, first of all, we didn't see this on our own. It's not something, oh, you're so smart. This is a gift. This is the I don't want to say $20. All right, this is a $100 bill that's on the floor. Okay, you picked it up. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Look at that. Isn't that great? And I'm not putting my heart in a $100 bill. I'm making you try and understand how precious and beautiful this gospel is, because that's the truth of it. That's what inspires you, because you realize that you've been separated from the world. And here the world is in darkness. Look what's going on. I mean, Scott and I, we see it all the time. You know, it's a no-brainer for us. You might not see it as much or as evident as we do. But there's a lot of misery out there. There's not a lot of comfort. And all the ones who are in comfort are in a delusion because they don't even know what comfort is, because they're having comfort with something that they have, but then can be taken away from them. And once it's taken away from them, they don't know what to do. What we have, no one can take away from us. It's in us. And it's by grace that we've got it. So I just hope someone got something out of that, and I hope that each and every one of us realize just how blessed and how fortunate we are, you know, especially in these last days. And we have to understand that, you know, it's his story. It's him making our choice. Yeah, we have choices to make. Absolutely. You have choices you have to make. You can choose this, or you can choose that. But let me tell you, whatever you chose, up here in that cloud, it was predestined that you were going to choose. So you want to say, well, I don't have a choice? You know, it's semantics sometimes, but just understand the power that you're dealing with, the omnipresence and the omnipotence of our Creator. It's by mercy, it's by grace. Otherwise, if it was by your choice, then you could brag about it. And that's that mystery. That other mystery, he wants honor from men. Us, we should seek just honor from our Father, and our Father only. So I just hope someone got something out of that. I'm going to give all praise and all glory to Yahshua the Messiah. With that, I'm going to take my seat.
Thank you, Frank. Our next speaker will be the president of our class, Dr. Robert Welch.
Thank you. Good evening. Okay, I enjoyed the first two speakers. Carol, I've had my chance to talk to Jehovah's Witnesses myself. And you know, they can't quite get a grip on how we even present witnesses. I've had a chance to really sit down and do some hashing out with them. But one of the big things, I don't know if you've heard it before, but they say that the Messiah was not on a cross, that he was impaled on a stake. I don't know if you ever heard that. And so we had chatted about that and went back to the Strong's, and it does pick up, I'm trying to think of the way I think we looked up cross, and it'll take you to stake. You know, if you go back to the original, I think it was the Hebrew. Can't remember, I'd have to do it again, but it goes back to stake, but it also picked up a cross, you know, so it does pick both up. So we're just talking, and that's the beauty of these scriptures, is you can try to understand how Yahshua's purpose is working through these scriptures. So, of course, we went back, you know, right back to Adam and Eve. And we know that there's also a quote there that talks about, I'm not sure if it's Timothy, that talks about cursed is every man that hangs on a tree, right? So, of course, that's what Yahshua was doing for us, was taking on that curse of the law because nobody could keep it. The law was a curse unto Israel. And that's what it was meant to do, so that he could come in and be a savior to his people, you know. And so if you go back to Adam and Eve, it's really hard to deny that when Adam and Eve fell, it was because they had partaken of it. Actually, it says all you have to do is touch it. All you got to do is touch it, right? Of course, then they did eat as well. But so as soon as they touched what? What did they touch? On the tree, right? So we know that when Adam and Eve were, or when Adam was originally put into the garden, created outside of the garden, and then placed in the garden, right? That he had a physical body, a physical stomach, and he needed to partake of nutrition, right? So when Yahweh put him in that garden, it had to be in fruition is the point, right? It had to be able to sustain a natural man. So here you got trees, and they're laden with fruit, so the branches are hanging down, right? I mean, it's not rocket scientists, but you know what? We would have never figured it out. We never would have figured out that Adam died at the tree, so Yahshua's got to put on a type of the tree. It can't be a steak. Sorry, can't be a steak. So then you go up into the priesthood here, and you see that they had to put the sacrifice on an altar, right? And on the altar, underneath the altar, of course, it's like a barbecue. And it's got a grating on the top. And the wood is laid, if you ever made a fire, and this had to be a pretty good fire to roast some of these animals, right? So, of course, you cross them sticks up. That's the way you don't just pile them one way because it won't burn very good. Cross the wood, right? So you can just start going back through these witnesses and seeing how important they are to do a number on somebody's concept, as Frank was talking about, right? So it's just so nice to be able to have something like this to discuss the true purpose of Yahweh and his relation to his bride, which is what we are, right? But I think what we'll do is I'll go back in here a little bit. We'll go into Exodus again, and I'll have you start at right in 1, and we'll see what we pull out.
Exodus 12 and 1. Yahweh spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you for a minute. Fill in the things that, we kind of take for granted, right? I'm going to have you start it again, Scott. So the point is here is that the children of Israel were in bondage some 400 years. And so that was prophesied that eventually they would be coming out. Their Savior would come, right? So here's 400 years. And then Frank was talking about the chronology on the Exodus, right? Years before the birth of Yahshua. Right? That's a long time.
Yeah.
Our country's only, what? Maybe 300 years old, 400 years old at best, right? United States. And you're talking about almost 1,500 years that this, before Yahshua comes in, that this law was maintained by the Jews, right? And it was supposed to be maintained. They were supposed to be keeping it. So let's start that again, please.
1. Yahweh spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months.
Okay, so now this is Aaron and Moses, and there's more to this story in the front of it, because Moses was under a death decree when he was born. So, of course, he's thrown into an ark or a basket, and they float him down the river, and Pharaoh's daughter picks him up out of the river. The name Moses means what? Drawn out, right? Yeah. So the very name of Moses means drawn out, so he was drawn, it was a death-like situation. he's brought in, and he's brought up in Pharaoh's house, which is pretty unique because none of the other Israelites had that happen, right? Here's Moses drawn out, brought in, and it's even phenomenal the way Yahweh works is his own mother, I believe, right, was hired to nurse him. How about that one? While as yet he's growing up in his house, his own mother that ended up trying to save his life is actually giving him the sustenance, right? So this is the stuff Yahweh can work, right? So at a point in time, Moses comes of age and he sees that his people are not the Egyptians in the household that he's living in, but they're the ones that are out there being abused, and they were shepherds. They weren't well thought upon, his family. And he saw something going on with his family. They were being hard on him, and he ends up killing one of the Egyptians and buries him in the sand, right? This is story before this goes on, because we're reading that Moses and Aaron are already back down in Egypt, okay? So I think it's 40 years old that you can pick up that he comes out of there. Is it, Dan? Moses coming out? Mm-hmm. Somewhere you can pick it up.
I think in Exodus 12. Moses
Is it in 12? When Moses is age when he comes out. Because he's up here for a time and it's...
He's 40 years old when he's out of Egypt.
Yeah, so, and then I think by the time he comes back out, the time we're talking about, he's in his 80s. I want to say
He's 80.
80 years old, right? So here he is at, middle age, 40 years old. He comes out of there because he's being persecuted. Pharaoh was going to turn on Moses, right? So out he comes, and that whole situation takes place in the wilderness of Sinai, where he comes across his future wife. He gets married, and Yahweh comes to him. You know what? For the sake of the camera, let's jump back to the 3rd chapter and pick that up in 1. We'll read a little bit of this.
Exodus 3 and 1. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the desert, and came to the mountain of Elohim, even to Horeb.
So there's a mountain of Elohim, or Horeb, and he's already been married. This is his father-in-law, right? Moses got married up here, and he's with a woman. Go ahead, please.
And the angel of Yahweh appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush.
So this is the start of Moses heading back down into the 12th chapter, right? He sees a burning bush. Go ahead.
And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned.
Right.
When Yahweh saw that he turned aside to see, Elohim called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not near here, put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground.
So he's telling Moses, right? Yeah, I heard Dr. Kinley talk about where that tabernacle would have been built. He's standing on the holy spot of where the tabernacle was going to be built, right? And it shows him in a little picture here in front of the burning bush with his shoes off, right? Take off thy shoes. Why? Because on your bottom of your foot is your what?
Soul.
It's in principle your soul. So you got to come to him and bear your soul, right?
Yeah.
Let's read a little more, please.
Moreover, he said, I am the Elohim of thy father.
So he's showing him, and he's going back saying, I'm the very one that's the God of your fathers, or the Elohim of your fathers, right? He's kind of trying to connect the dots with Moses. Please read.
The Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob.
See, and didn't there go back to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob? And it was Jacob who was changed to Israel, and they all came down into that bondage originally that they were in for 400 years, right? Just catch up on the story here a little bit. Go ahead.
Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon Elohim. And Yahweh said, I have surely surely seen the affliction of my people.
Now Yahweh says to Moses, I've seen the affliction of my people, right?
Yes.
He tells him he's aware of what's going on. Go ahead, please.
Who are in Egypt,
Who are in Egypt.
have heard the cry by reason of their taskmasters, and I know their sorrows.
And you know, I remember in a transcript, Dr. Kinley was talking about, he was actually there. He, you know, we think, oh, he heard, he's God, he can hear anything. No, he was down there, right? You're talking about our Creator that can go, we've been talking about him in a resurrected state, and people want to see a physical state, right? We're talking about a Creator that, and the quote came to my mind, maybe we can get it at some point, where it says, I have the power to lay it down,
Yes.
the body, and the power to pick it back up again, right? So that's what's going on. He can be places, and they even asked Dr. Kinley times, oh, Doc, you're going to go to Jerusalem? Is that with or without baggage? Well, what do you mean by that? That means he had the power of taking off the body and traveling somewhere. Not everybody can do that, right? Some call it astral projecting, if you ever heard of it. So here's the Creator. He's hearing something. Could you repeat that, please? He was hearing, he was seeing.
Moreover, he said, I am the Elohim of thy father, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon Elohim. And Yahweh said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt.
So he's seen the affliction, Moses. He's aware of what's going on down there, right?
And have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters.
So he's seen what's going on down there in Egypt. He's seen and he's heard what's going on. In other words, he's in touch. This isn't some... So he's starting to tell Moses, look, I'm connected with this situation, right? I'm not out there, you know, I'm not up above the clouds somewhere. We talk about him being ever-present. He's ever-present here in this story pattern. Please read.
I know their sorrows, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians.
I know their sorrows. They got sorrow down there. Now, if he knew their sorrow back there, at the end of an age, the purpose gets tougher, right? Didn't it get tougher when they came out of here? They took their brick, they took their straw away to make brick, and they had to make the same tally of brick. I mean, he was aware of that. Could you repeat that, Deb?
Yahweh said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt.
I've seen them, their affliction. I know their affliction. He's aware of it. In this whole thing, and the beauty of this is Yahweh's timing. And I think Scott was reading it where, look, right in Exodus 12th chapter, see that this month is the beginning of, Yahweh come down and set up a calendar for them, for Israel. He set up that time.
Yes.
Who does that? Who can do that, right? He's going, now this is going to be the first month for you. But let's read. He's connected here, right? Go ahead, please.
I have seen the affliction of my people who
Right.
are in Egypt.
Right.
I have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, and I know their sorrow.
And I know their sorrows. Please read.
And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a large and good land, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, and the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppress them. Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said unto El, Who am I, that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt?
So Yahweh Elohim has laid this whole scenario out for Moses. This is what's going on. And what's Moses say? Whoa, I think you got the wrong guy. Right? Are you sure about this? I'm not really well liked down there. Why? Because he was wanted for killing an Egyptian. one of the Egyptians, right? And okay,
And he said, Certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee.
so this is the thing to understand about this Passover, is it's not something that's distant from our Creator or out there or that's just happening however. And you know, and your speakers, Frank's been talking about going through the book and seeing these different principles line up through the book, and they're showing Yahshua, right? So this isn't something willy-nilly. Could you repeat that, please?
He said, Certainly I will be with thee.
Certainly, excuse me. Moses, I'm going to be with you. This is the guy that allowed them to be in bondage. He's heard their cry. In other words, he's not far away from them. He's not distant. He's on it. Because everything about Yahweh's purpose is timing. Timing's everything, and he's impeccable about it. And I'm not the best at running all the numbers and things like that, but the numbers can be run. Yeah. These things fit. He comes in right on time in this beginning of the present kingdom age and to the end of this post-Diluvian age to bring out the law. He's right on time with everything. He hasn't missed a beat as far as Yahweh's purpose, but Moses doesn't know that. We didn't know that either. We didn't know how tuned he was to his purpose. We had no clue. No clue. You say, well, if you went to the seminary, you'd know. Nope. They don't teach this down there. They don't teach this at the Jehovah's Witnesses either. They use the same book. They can pull some quotes. But look, when you were, I was thinking of it, Carol, when you were up here, that when the truth goes forth, right, it's going to have an effect. It can be positive, and somebody can be quickened by this beautiful gospel in front of us, or what? Mm-hmm. There's another side. Somebody can be hardened, and where it saves one, it can send the other one to the lake of fire. And it's just that simple. That's right. It really is. And it's disheartening if you dwell on it too much. But Yahweh has given us, He's given us a promise, and we know that He can fulfill it. We know that there's better things than the flesh. And even the founder said, don't be worried about taking the flesh off. It's not that big a deal, you know. It's not as bad as all the hype, right? He said, look, you're a son of Yahweh. He's taking care of you, right? He hasn't lost sight of you. If he hasn't lost sight of 1 million people down here, look, he can clue in on any one of them. Can he? Yeah. Every one of us he knows. Wasn't there a book that Moses found out about back here? Yeah. The book of what?
Life.
Book of Yashar, book of life, right? And in that book, there were names written.
Yes.
In other words, that's Yahweh Elohim just revealing to Moses up there that there was something written in Yahweh's heart with a list. And that list is his sons and daughters that are going to be brought into this body. And that he hasn't forgotten one of them. And if they're written, you remember how the high priest went in here on that Day of Atonement, and he had that mirror across his forehead, right? And it was heavy. It was made of gold, I believe. Yeah, I think it was gold on the front, right? And it attached with a ribbon, and it came across his forehead and said what? And it was called but it's called a signet, right? And if you look it up, it's like a king's ring. They take the wax and seal the envelope, to seal it. That's the type of idea. So when he had that signet of holiness to Yahweh across there, and he took that off, what could you still see? That name written in his forehead, right? That name was on his mind even when he left out of that tabernacle. It was physically on his presence, right? And that's what we do. I mean, Carol, for you to tell somebody the true name, it's going to have an effect. It had an effect. If it didn't then, it will, because you're either denying it or you're accepting it. And somebody could accept that name. You know, I remember flying out on a plane one time with Dennis. We were going to a seminar in Oregon. And we flew out of Green Bay. And we were talking about some stuff, of course, and we're flying. And Dennis goes, hey, look. He goes, that guy up there. He goes, he's listening. He goes, he might, you know, we're just chatting about it. He goes, now, he might have heard everything he needed to hear, and we'll never see him again.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the power of this gospel. When that truth goes out, I remember, I know we all have that story about how we came into class and who talked to us, right? I remember Norm Mook saying one time, he goes, yeah, I was at a construction site, sitting there having a sandwich, two guys over there talking about class, and he overheard it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. In other words, if you're not in there, you're not going to be lost. We're talking about a creator that has a long arm, and he's been thinking about us for a long time, right? A long time he's been doing this. Yeah. All right, so we're in a little more there, Deb, maybe?
Certainly I will be with thee.
Right.
This shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee.
Now this is going to be a token to you that I have sent you. Go ahead.
When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, you shall serve Elohim upon this mountain.
Oh yeah, Yahweh. Easy for you to say. When I bring these, you see what he's laying on Moses?
Yeah.
He's laying on this dude. Go on back there and bring it. Could you repeat that, Deb? That's
When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt.
when you have brought, he's talking to Moses, isn't he?
Yes.
He's saying, Moses, when you come on out of there and brought forth my people, what, Deb?
Out of Egypt.
Out of Egypt.
You shall serve Elohim upon this mountain.
You are going to serve me on this mountain that you're at right there with your shoes off. That's where you're going to do that, Moses. Please read. This is...
And Moses said unto Elohim, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the Elohim of your fathers has sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them?
Right, Carol? There's the name. You got it over in Acts 4:7. That power of the name. There was power in it back here. And you know what? This Moses, he had a lot of education in a short amount of time, right? This is the first time that name of Yahweh was revealed to anyone in the flesh, right? Anyone. And here he is. Moses is getting this, boom, all at once. He's just getting all this stuff. You go, oh yeah, he's getting a new name. God's got a name. And all of a sudden, he's got a plan for me that I just really, I was just tending my sheep. I was just out here tending my sheep. And I think Frank talked about him. David. I remember John working with it one time. Where was David when they were lining up the guys, remember? All the sons? Nope, that's not him. Nope. You got any more? Yeah. Oh, we got one dude out there. He's doing the shepherd thing, right? He's taking care. John worked it that way. That shepherd, right? There's that shepherd out there. Oh, well, get him in here. Let's take a look at him. They take a look at him. That's the one I want. The one that was out there doing the shepherd thing, right? The stinking shepherd sheep thing. Yeah. All right. So he's getting the name here. He's not going down there empty-handed. Please read, Deb.
Elohim said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am has sent me unto you.
So now we go back into this Bible, and Dr. Kinley showed us a lot of these imperfections, these mistakes, right? Or what do you call them? Various, misinterpretation, mistranslations, right? And so in the book it says, could you read it again?
I am that I am.
I am that I am. Well, can't anybody say that?
Yes.
I am what I am. Just a washed up stonemason, right? You are what you are. I am what I am. But see, that doesn't, when it's mistranslated, right? What did it really say there?
Aya, Asher, Aya.
It said Aya, Asher, Aya, translated as
I will be
what I will to be. Now that's something that we can't all say, because I'd like to be a lot healthier, but I just can't I just can't have 30-year-old knees anymore, right? You can't will yourself to be you might will yourself to be to work or something like that, but you can't will yourself to be what you want to be.
That's right.
You can't do that. So this is, I'm just trying to give you the gist of what Moses is going through, standing there in front of this bush that's burning, it's not consuming. Of course, it's a vision to Moses. This is a vision he's having, right? Please read.
And Elohim said moreover unto Moses, Thou shalt not say unto the children of Israel, Yahweh Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham,
Right. Mm-hmm.
the Elohim of Isaac, and
Right.
the Elohim of Jacob, has sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations.
So this is it. This is the name forever, and it's going to be a memorial unto all generations. Right? Let's read a little more.
Go and gather the elders of Israel together, and say unto them, Yahweh Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, appeared unto me, saying, I have surely visited you, and seen that which is done to you in Egypt. And I have said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt, into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, unto a land flowing with milk and honey.
So he's telling him there's going to be a movement here, and they're going from bad to better. They're going to inherit this promise. So that's what this whole, throwing Passover in here, this Passover is major. And the founder said this about the Passover. He said, that was the only Passover. All the rest of them were what?
Memorials.
They were memorials of this one.
Yes.
I mean, that's the way he was looking at what happened down here. In other words, that was instrumental. The lining up of this shepherd to go down there with the name and to bring Israel out by a mighty hand. So that's how we get Moses into Egypt, right? And I think I want to go about done there, Deb.
One verse
Okay.
here. And they shall hearken to thy voice, and thou shalt come, thou and the elders of Israel, unto the king of Egypt, and ye shall say unto him, Yahweh Elohim of the Hebrews has met with us, and now let us go, we beseech thee, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim.
He's already telling them. I'm going to have you start that again, Deb. There's a lot in that.
Okay, and they shall hearken to thy voice,
So they're going to hearken to Moses' voice, right?
and thou shalt come, thou and the elders of Israel, unto the king of Egypt, and ye shall say unto him, Yahweh Elohim of the Hebrews has met with us.
So all the elders and him are going to go up in front of Pharaoh, right? The king. Go ahead.
Now let us go, we beseech thee.
Now this is what he's telling. It's to try to stand. You see these great movies with how they depict Egypt as such a dynasty, right? And in the wealth that they had down there. And here he's standing in this king's chamber, right? Telling them, and you know what? I don't think we got it, but you know what? Yahweh takes this shepherd and he's got a problem.
Right,
Right?
that's in 4.
Is it right there? Okay.
4 and 10.
Oh,
Exodus 4 and 10. And Moses said unto Yahweh, O Yahweh, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant. I am slow of speech, and of a slow tongue.
piece of slow. So he's talking about Moses going down there, and Moses has an excuse. I think it's legitimate. What are you sending me up to the king for when I can't talk?
Yeah.
Right? And Dr. Kinley, in the transcript, he said he stuttered 7 times. King. But I remember Mitch working with it and said it drove Pharaoh crazy. So finally, right? And finally, he does give him Aaron as a mouthpiece because he just wasn't doing well with Pharaoh, right? but he's not eloquent. He just doesn't, he's got a, go ahead, Scott, sorry.
And Yahweh said unto him, Who hath made man's mouth?
Who's made your mouth? Who gave you the stuttering problem? To begin with, go ahead.
Or who maketh the dumb or deaf?
Who maketh the dumb or the deaf? And they just, or the what?
Or the seeing, or the blind.
Or the seen or the blind, right? And we just talked about, I think Deb picked it up the other night, talking about that blind man, right? That Yahshua heals. And the guy says, well, and has anybody been watching the History Channel on the Jesus thing? It's been on every Monday, and I don't know how many more, but you've been watching it, Mike?
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool in a sense. It's not all accurate or anything, but what it does is gives you an idea how things play out before you. Because these things aren't just stories, these are events. You know, we always try to make that clarification, that these aren't just cool stories that you read to the kids that, you know, Jonah swallowed up by a whale. That's not what these are. These are events. And when you see these things on the way they're doing this movie, it just brings I could see how these interactions would take place. And, you know, they're guessing at a lot of stuff. But, what was I saying?
Seen or the blind.
Yeah.
Yes.
Aaron be in the mouth.
Yeah, the blind man, right? He says, yes, they're playing that thing out in the History Channel thing. And Yahshua heals him. And finally, they got him in there, and they're just on him. The scribes and Pharisees, the Sadducees, right? They are on this guy that was healed. He goes, are you sure you were healed when you're blind from birth?
Yeah.
That's the thing that they're bringing out, right?
Yeah.
They even brought it showed on there that they brought the parents in to verify. Was he blind? Did you see that part of mine? Was he really blind from birth? He goes, he was blind from birth. And the guy finally says, hey, right, it's in the book. He says, I don't know. But what I do know is I was blind and what? Now I see, and he's the one that did it. Right? That's what I do know. So here's, you know, how many times have we had excuses? Geez, I'm nervous. I don't want to go to class. I hope I don't have to be on the floor. I mean, you know, have we thought that kind of stuff, right? Yahweh can take care of that stuff. Please, a little more there, Scott.
Who hath made man's mouth, or who maketh the dumb or deaf, or the seeing or the blind?
Right.
Have not I, Yahweh?
Hasn't he made them to begin with, right? He's taken Moses' excuse away. Go ahead.
Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say.
Now see, does that part actually make sense when the Messiah comes in? Because when he's teaching those disciples, he goes, now don't go worrying about writing it all down. I mean, we take notes. We do. We take notes. He goes, don't you worry about it a bit, right? Because what did he say? I will what? I'll bring all things back to your remembrance. It's time for you to have something coming out in my name. It's going to come out. Don't you worry about flubbing nothing. It's his purpose going on, right? He's always, you know, wasn't he an underdog? Well, welcome to the party, right? Welcome to the party. Why did he pick us? You know, as Carol was saying, why us? Why? Well, you know what? Something's been written down, and he just pulled you out, just like that. I think Deb was working with the birth there with fallopian tubes and how those fingers come out when the egg comes down and it comes into maturity and comes out of the fallopian tube. And there's those fimbriae that mean finger, and they just go, because there's an expanse there. There's a little gap. I don't know how big, but those fimbriae, the fingers bring the egg in to fertilize it. Isn't that something? Right? So the body is even showing forth. Oh, it's a great witness to the purpose of Yahweh. Were you done there, Scott?
Maybe read down until 15. Did you want exactly what he says to Aaron?
Go ahead, read some more then.
And he said, O Yahweh, send, I pray thee, by the hand of him who thou wilt send. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against Moses. And he said, Is not Aaron the Levite thy brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee. And when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. And thou shalt speak unto him, and put words in his mouth, And I will be with thy mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you what you shall do.
Excuse me. So here Moses comes out, right, 40 years old, comes into the wilderness. 40 years later, right, see his hair over here? He's an elder. He's an older man. He's 80 years old when this is going on, when he's sent back here into Egypt. So 40 years, and I remember Mitch talking about this, and I don't remember exactly how it's worded in the book, but he talked about Aaron meeting Moses again for the first time in a long time, right? So it's been 40 years. So I remember Mitch saying like, oh, is that Aaron? And Aaron saying, oh, is that Moses? You know, in other words, it took a while to recognize because 40 years took place, right? Yeah. But they knew each other. So anyways, there's this thing going on where he provides a mouthpiece for him. Okay, go ahead.
And he shall be a spokesman unto the people.
Right.
And he shall be, even he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of Elohim.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And thou shalt take this rod in thine hand, and wherewith thou shalt do signs.
Okay, so we go into showing how he had witnesses to put before the king. All right, Deb, did I leave you hanging with just a little left in there?
We're back
Thanks, Scott.
here. Let's see here. That was 18 where it talked about Yahweh Elohim of the Hebrews has met with us, and now let us go, we beseech thee, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim.
Right.
I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go, no, not by a mighty hand. I will stretch out my hand and smite Egypt with all my wonders, which I will do in the midst thereof, and after that he will let you go. Mm-hmm. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it shall come to pass that when you go, you shall not go empty.
Mm-hmm. You shall not go empty. And I think you can go into Genesis towards the last couple chapters where it talks about prophesying that will come out with great substance. When Israel does come out after a 400-year period, I'm not sure exactly where it is, but after that 400-year period down there, it's going to come out with a substance. And that's what this is referring to, right? There's a substance they're coming out with. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Every woman shall ask of her neighbor and of her who sojourneth in her house jewels of silver, jewels of gold, raiment, and you shall put them upon your sons and upon your daughters, and you shall despoil the Egyptians.
So they're spoiling the Egyptians. They're coming out with all this gold, the brass, all these things that they needed to build the tabernacle, which Yahweh had stored up way back here with Joseph. Remember Joseph going through the famine, and by his prophecy, he was made second in command to Pharaoh way back when? So all that treasure was laid up because Yahweh brought it all together in one spot. Way back here, right? But it appeared as though the Egyptians owned it, but when it's time for Yahweh to move and take the children of Israel out, he's taking that substance with him. Right? And they take it up into the wilderness to create that tabernacle. So that's about it, right, Deb? So I want to go back. I said all that to give a little bit of a preview of what's going on with this Passover. You still there, Scott? Okay, please read.
Exodus 12, and we got to about 3. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their father, a lamb for a house.
Mm-hmm. So I want to say that, just to provoke your thinking, do you think they ever took a lamb to their house before? Right? Each house took a lamb to sacrifice. Could you read it again, Scott?
Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying,
all the congregation, speak unto all of them, saying, yep.
In the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house.
So in other words, according to their fathers or according to their family, they take a lamb. Now the point, what I'm trying to get you to see is, it's not the first time they took a lamb out, because they're shepherds, right? They have sheep, they have goats, they have some cattle possibly, right? So it's not unusual for them to sacrifice a lamb. What's the big deal here? But he also told him, right, you do it on a certain time or day. Could you repeat that part? On the 10th?
In the 10th day of this month,
So in the 10th day of Abib, or April, the new year that Yahweh started, on that 10th day of that new calendar, boom, this is going to happen. Right, go
they
ahead.
shall take to them every man a lamb,
They take every man one of these lambs, go ahead.
according to the house of their fathers,
Yes,
a lamb for a house.
a lamb for a house.
And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of souls.
See, so if you couldn't eat all your lamb, your kids weren't that hungry, or your family wasn't that hungry, you had some left over, what'd you have to do? Right? Hey, Tracy, your kids eating today? Right? Did they eat all their Passover food? Because we got, you guys are going to have to gobble this up. Why? Because what happened to that? You couldn't be leaving that around, right?
Right.
Remember, Frank was talking about let nothing remain.
Right.
So you see what's going on? So it's not unusual to have a lamb, but it is unusual to have it in a particular fashion. It's been in their midst all the time. Now, for 400 years, this is the point. They couldn't figure that out. They couldn't figure out that they could offer a lamb in the whole process of it, the pattern of it. They couldn't figure that out for 400 years because they had a lamb. They had meat, right? Please read.
If the household be too little for the lamb,
Right.
let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb.
So see, that's why Yahshua, when he's in the flesh, he says, knock and I will come in and sup with you, right? So Yahshua's got to fulfill all these things as Frank was talking about. He's got to fulfill all these examples down through the law and the prophets. And especially this Passover is just so tight. It's every aspect of it is showing his purpose. It's wonderful when you see it. And it gives you a confidence that you know that if he can do a Passover here, heck, he can pull one off at the end of this age with us. Right? Please keep reading though.
The lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year.
So this is now it's getting specific. You see what I'm saying? Now it's got to be a male of the first year. And what, Scott?
Your lamb shall be without blemish.
And without blemish. Go ahead.
The male of the first year, ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goat.
Or from the goats.
And ye shall keep it unto the 14th day of the same month.
See how it's getting kind of particular now? Right? And how the heck do you find out whether your critter has got a blemish or not?
Yeah, that's true.
Right? You got to shear the sheep. You got to get the hair off the goat. You got to find out, right? And then they're still alive when you don't you shear a sheep and he keeps on living,
Yeah.
right? So here's this. Now you got them all shaved. Now what do they have to do? This is a little technical, right? And he says, am I ahead of it? The 3 days? You got to, there's a, huh? Well, just keep reading it. Sorry.
And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening.
So the whole assembly is going to kill that. The whole assembly. That's why with Yahshua, right? That down there, standing in front of Pilate down there, right? And all the Jews say, they offer Barabbas, which was a robber, I believe, right? And they say, you want Yahshua to be crucified? Or you want Barabbas? They took Barabbas. Why? Because this lamb had to go down. This lamb had to go down. And he went down for us. That's the point. This all happened on his schedule to such a point, but he's doing it for us.
Right.
He has had this thing planned before any of it came forth, right? Please read.
Verse 7, and they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper doorposts of the house.
Right. The
Where
blood,
ye shall eat it.
and Frank made that point. And they had a big talk about that back around when Mitchell was teaching us here, and they said there was a thing about, they asked Dr. Kinley, because there was a controversy about it, was the blood on the inside of the door or the outside of the door? And he said, well, where's your blood? Right? I mean, that's the kind of, that's when you see that this purpose of Yahweh and what He created with these bodies, right, is just going according to this tight pattern. He has this particular way, and that's what gives us stability, right? So I didn't catch. Keep reading, Scott, please.
And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat.
So it's a certain, you can run these correlations. Keep going, please.
Not raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head with his legs, and with the purtenance thereof.
Now, there's another way to look at that roast, right? They had to roast him. It was all on a certain way, but it was inside the house, And when they go to have these communions and they're transubstantiating things into something else, right? Where are they doing it? They're doing it out in the congregation or out in the church somewhere or out in this building somewhere. And Yahweh's setting up this Passover to be done in their house with their family, right? It's their personal people around them. They're not out in some, with the body, right? Go ahead.
And you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning you shall burn with fire.
You shall burn it. So nothing will remain. Now, another word for roast, right? You ever heard of a celebrity roast? Yeah. Another word for roast is to criticize, right? So you want to wonder why did they put Yahshua on a spit and roast him? No. But did they criticize him? Right? He was that's the kind of roasting they did. Every time he turned around, they were trying to nail him, Yeah. Well, he says things to him like, before Abraham was, I am. And they called that blasphemy. And So at a point, he has to rile them all up like a hornet's nest so that he can get on that cross and do what he's got to do for us, right? So that's what's going on, see. Keep reading here, though.
And thus shall you eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand.
So this Passover was meant to be done, right? And it's talking about at night. And when this Passover is eaten, you better be ready to go with your shoes on your feet. Not like Moses when he took his moccasins off there. You have your shoes on your feet and you be ready to roll, right? You be ready to go. Have your staff in your hand and get that don't forget the substance that you got to come out of there with. You got to grab that as well. Please read, Scott, though.
And you shall eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Passover.
You just get it down. And if you don't have enough, you go over and knock. Give the food to them. Get it down so we can get them on out of there, right? On time. And, he prophesied of that. He's telling them it's got to come this way. Go ahead, Scott.
For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt.
Because this is what's happening. I will pass. Who will pass over? Yahweh Elohim's going to pass over the death angel because he's looking for what? What's the death? What's he looking for in the house?
The blood.
The blood. Blood on the door? Well, am I getting ahead of myself? Please read.
Both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt, I will execute judgment. I am Yahweh. The blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are.
So there's that blood. It's a token, and this is Yahweh Elohim is passing judgment down here. He's passing a judgment to the whole. And I think Deb said it the other night. How that all that firstborn died all the way through. The cattle, the children, right, all the way through. All the firstborn. He didn't leave anything out, except for those that had the blood on the inside of their door. Please read.
And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you.
So,
smite the land of Egypt.
So it's the blood, right, on the door of their house after they've had this full meal. And we always say that in order for them to get on out of here, The lamb had to be where?
In them.
Had to be in them, right? Physically in them back here in order for that Passover to take place. No lamb, no going. You ain't going. See, and that's what's happening in this. Yahweh's got a place for his sons, and he's got another place, right? And without that blood on your thinking, that only righteous blood, then there's going to be a problem. We must accept that only righteous sacrifice that was done. See? And all this Passover is pointing to that. Keep reading though, Scott. I don't know what time oh boy.
And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt.
Right.
And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to Yahweh throughout your generations.
So this is a feast. Yahweh tells him, you keep it throughout your generations. So I started out talking about how this was 1,490 years before the birth of Yahshua. 1,500 years they had to do this. Keep this memorial. That's a long time. See? So when Yahshua comes in and he starts doing things that are just not what they're used to, that's what riles them up. And they really didn't understand the purpose. They didn't understand the scriptures. They knew the scriptures, but they didn't understand what they were pointing to. Please read.
And this day shall be unto you a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to Yahweh throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day unto the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and in the seventh day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them,
Okay.
save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you.
So he's starting to get into all these details with it, right, coming up. And I didn't realize what time. I'll give a little more time to somebody else. I hope you got something out of it, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Bob. Next speaker, I'd like to call Dr. Dan Shepard.
What time is it?
20 minutes.
20 minutes? That's one of the things that points out who this really is, who was back there and is still active today. We talked about before how the world does not look like God is here. And back in the 60s, they had a Time magazine cover, Is God Dead? And thanks to our current president, they had the exact same cover except it said is Truth Dead. Okay? And for the people who have been here a while, we know Yahshua is the way, the truth, and the life. But he's not dead. It's just that this physical creation is kindergarten. It's just a classroom. Okay? And all he's taken back with him, we pointed out before how he came out of the pure spirit, became Elohim. Elohim created everything. Then Elohim got into the body, did his ministry, and now he's going back. And people point out how here at the beginning, by himself, and at the end, he's got his offspring. Right? That's one reason why he told Adam to be fruitful and multiply.
Adam was a shadow of him. And, well, what is pointing out, another thing that's pointing this out as God is he wrote his biography, then he came in and lived it.
Yes.
That we pulled Matthew 5:17.
Yes.
Luke 24, 25 through 27, then drop down to 44. And as you just saw, this Passover lamb was an indication of what happened with the Messiah.
Luke 24 and 25. Then he said unto them, O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken.
Now this is the Messiah talking to the two disciples on the road to Emmaus after his resurrection, right?
Yes.
Okay?
Ought not the Messiah to have suffered these things and to enter
And-
into his glory?
And I liked this so much the last time I said it because I took this class about communication. And in the class they talk about if somebody comes up to you, you're not supposed to roll your eyes when they say something stupid. And I'm just wondering if now he's in his resurrection. Oh, didn't you get it the first time?
That's right.
Obviously not, but that's okay because as they talk about the founder, when he was trying to explain something, he didn't roll his eyes.
Right.
He would take his time, and if one way didn't work, another way worked. And really that's how Yahweh has done it. He has given us 6,000 years of history and a whole universe so that we have no excuse. If we'll hold that, please. Or continue reading. Can you get Hebrews 12:1, please?
And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded unto them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Verse 44, he said unto them, These are the words which I spoke unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses, in the prophets, and in the Psalms concerning me.
Right. Now, this was the son of Elohim, and okay, you got that, Scott?
Yeah, Hebrews 12 and 1. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us.
Well, we've talked about it before, and we're going to talk about it again, just to go along with what we just said about the founder and about Yahweh Elohim. He has given us so great a cloud of witnesses.
Right.
He is proving his point ad infinitum. They're just so that nobody was without excuse. We've had people get up here and talked about the threefold nature of hair. You've got the body, right? You got the tabernacle, you got the physical body, right? You got the ark, or the altar, looks like the intestines. You got the laver, correlates to the kidneys. The horn of anointing oil correlates to the adrenal glands. Because back then, Yahweh Elohim was in the tabernacle. And now you have the tabernacle of our bodies. Can we get 2 Corinthians 5th chapter, please? That's where he dwelt before. And now he's going to be dwelling in the bodies.
2 Corinthians
Quick.
5 and 1. For we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have the building of Elohim,
Now he's in this tabernacle. And you can look in pretty much any dictionary, any fairly comprehensive dictionary, and it'll look up tabernacle and it'll say their body. Okay? But I just want to emphasize the one point there. It doesn't look like God cares. I mean, just the stuff that goes on. But see, no matter what happens, it can't touch the soul. And we might as well get it again. Romans 8:18. Because I know I'm not the only one that has to think about this.
Romans 8:18. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us.
Right. And the prime example we use is a woman having a baby. Now, there are exceptions. I remember one lady got up here with her child in the audience and said, it was just so painful, I'm never having another one. But that was the exception.
Right. That's right.
And before the baby comes, she wants to stab the guy that gave it to her. But once they get the baby, yeah.
That's the joy.
Yeah. And it may, but there are prime examples. I don't want to get to, back there, Exodus 13 chapter, where they're at the Red Sea.
Is that 14?
Maybe 14, where they're saying we should have stayed in Egypt. Of course, they said that all the time. You know. But just specifically because now they're at the Red Sea and they're cornered. And I remember in the Ten Commandments, Yul Brynner's, well, your God is not such a great general. Then he showed him he was. Of course, Hollywood, Yul Brynner's a big star. He lived.
Yeah.
And in the new one, Exodus, Gods and Kings, Joel Edgerton played Pharaoh. And he lived too. Back there. Right?
Right.
And you were talking about Moses, where he ran away. Something to think about who Moses killed. Did Pharaoh die, the plague of the firstborn?
No.
So there must have been another one. Remember, Moses was raised in Pharaoh's household as the son of his daughter. If it was just some Egyptian off the street, do you really think Pharaoh would have cared?
No.
Okay. But the point is, you're there, you got it?
14 and 11. And they said unto Moses, Behold, because there were no graves in Egypt, thou hast taken us away to die in the wilderness. Wherefore hast thou dealt with us to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For had it been better for us to serve the Egyptians, that we should die in the wilderness? And Moses said unto the people, Fear not, stand still. See the salvation of Yahweh, which he will show to you today. For
And what is salvation of Yahweh? What means salvation of Yahweh?
Yahshua.
Yahshua. Stand still and see Yahshua. Okay, now Exodus 15 chapter. Now they're on the other side. Pharaoh's gone.
Exodus 15:1. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto Yahweh, and spake, saying, I will sing unto Yahweh, for he hath triumphed gloriously.
Right? Okay, 10 minutes ago, and I'm just saying that how quickly it is, they're terrified. They thought they were going to die. Now they're dancing happy. Right? And there's a reason they were called the children of Israel. Because they're spoiled little brats. You know, they did have it tough back here. And anytime you're going to get a major change like that, it's going to be tough. Especially since the first generation didn't have the heart in them. So they weren't going to be improved anyways. And that led to denying the spies, being cursed for 40 years in the wilderness until the first generation died. But that's all part of the purpose, right? And your book says Joshua, right? Now, we know there was no J, and I'm going to let Scott get this one because he likes it so much. Deuteronomy, the 23rd chapter, please. And coming out of Egypt, they were calling him Moshiach. And when they got to the other side, they changed his name. It says Joshua, but it wasn't Joshua because there's no J. It was Yahshua. And there's other examples. Scott, read, please.
Deuteronomy 23:12. Thou shalt have a place also outside the camp, whither thou shalt go forth abroad. And thou shalt have a paddle upon thy weapon, and it shall be, when thou wilt ease thyself abroad, thou shalt dig therewith, and shalt turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. For Yahweh thy Elohim walketh in the midst of thy camp to deliver thee, and to give up thine enemies before thee. Therefore shall thy camp be holy, that he see no unclean thing in thee, and turn away from thee.
Sounds a little like Disneyland. You know, Disneyland, they're not supposed to have a piece of paper on the ground for 10 minutes, within 10 minutes. Wow. Yeah. We need to get some of those people at the hospital. I'm picking stuff up. I'm picking stickers up off the ground before, you know, then you got to scrape them up.
Yeah.
But basically what it's saying is you got to go outside the camp so that Yahweh doesn't step in it.
Right.
And it's also, we're not going to take time to get it, but Exodus 24th chapter, actually it's Exodus 19th chapter, says no one touched the mountain. Well, no. Or you're going to get run through, except Moses. Then all of a sudden you got Joshua going up with him. That's because Joshua was the one that gave him the rule. Okay? But you see, by the Easter, that description, or not Easter, Passover, it's a description of the crucifixion, right down to the detail. And there's more there to it than was getting into today. And you can run it right through the law, first 5 books. You find the correlating principles in the prophets, and right up into the fulfillment. Because those principles run right through. And it was part of that law that they were doing all the way back here. And just the fact that okay, I don't want to get off into that. You've seen how the Messiah talked about how he had to fulfill what happened back in the law and the prophets. And the Messiah, well, why don't we get John 17:3, Holy Name Bible, please. Got one? I mean, we can go to Zechariah 14:9. We can go to Deuteronomy 6:4. John 10:30. It's not a trinity. It's a unity. The Creator and the Creator gets into a physical body. Read, please.
John 17:3, out of the holy name. And this is life eternal, that they might know that thou only art the true El, and Yahshua the Messiah, whom thou hast sent.
Right, he's talking to the Father, and that he only is the Messiah. Read it again, please.
And this is life eternal, that they might know that thou only art the true El, and Yahshua the Messiah, whom thou hast sent.
Okay, and John 1:1, please.
John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Yahweh, and
Right.
the Word was Yahweh.
This is the Word. The Word was with Yahweh, and the Word was Yahweh, right? Take it to where he created all things.
All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made.
Including Satan. And drop down to 14, please.
Verse 14. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. The glory is of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth.
Then it got into a physical body. And the last one of our favorites, Isaiah 46:9 and 10. Because just don't have time to really break it down. You know,
Isaiah 46:9.
in 2 hours is a good time. You know, I know we go to some of these seminars, and because of the size of the schedule, they have more. They have longer classes, which is fine, but 2 hours is good. You know, then it gets a little, sometimes 2 hours is a little tough. But that's fine, because we ain't teaching you nothing. No matter who is up here, we're not doing the teaching. All we're doing is testifying. Isaiah 46:9 and 10.
Remember the former things of old, for I am Yahweh, and there is none else.
Okay. The former things of old, he is Yahweh, and there is none else. Read, please.
I am Yahweh, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning,
And from the beginning,
and
read.
from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure.
Right. That's the kind of God we're talking about down here. Flawless. All powerful. All knowing. Can't hide in your rectory. Okay? He's got it under control, and he's only concerned about the souls. Whatever happens here, as miserable it is, it is. You know, I just watched that movie, A Private War. Another movie about a lady war correspondent, hard working, hard playing, hard loving, just stayed there one day too long. And the last story that she died to get out is the people in Syria just being massacred. But, and you don't have to go to Syria. You just drive around the streets of Syracuse, and all these people, they're just, we see it all the time. You guys see it too, you know? They're just, but hopefully there's something for them in the next age.
That's right.
Now, maybe not some of the guys you got, but we don't have time to get it. As long as they're in the flesh, they have a chance.
Right.
Any questions, please ask.
Thank you, Dan. Thank everybody for coming. All rise for the doxology. Now unto him that is able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. To the only wise Elohim, our Savior, through Yahshua the Messiah, our Sovereign, belong glory and majesty, dominion and power, both before all time and now and ever. Let us all say hallelujah.